What's one thing from your past that you're still salty about? Story 1. Freshman year of high school, a classmate stole my diary out of my backpack, photocopied it, and sold the copies around the school. They confessed in the superintendent's office. I was the one who got suspended. My parents initially said they would press charges, but because the school refused to punish the students, apparently, a confession, physical evidence, and witness testimony weren't enough when a wealthy family was involved. My parents dropped it. Instead, they grounded me because I had written that I wanted to off myself out of how much I hated being bullied. Now, almost 20 years later, I am in my 12th year of therapy, trying to come to terms with how badly the adults in my life failed me and how deeply it messed me up. The bright side, I now have a couple of amazing best friends and a wonderful boyfriend supporting me as I go through my second round of college. I am studying to become a teacher, one far better than the ones I had. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. In my sophomore year, my English teacher refused to put me in AP English like she had promised during my freshman year. I had the highest grade in the class, wanted to be a writer, and was frankly tired of reading simplified versions of books because half the class couldn't keep up. The AP class had a great teacher, and during the last month of my freshman year, the teacher had said she would recommend me for the class and a transfer. She never did. The AP teacher said he would still accept me if she submitted the recommendation that day. It was just a permission slip she needed to sign. I asked her before class to sign it, and she claimed she already had recommended me. I told her the AP teacher never got it and needed her recommendation by the end of the day to approve the switch. Then she loudly announced that she had actually lied to my face and was never going to recommend me, that I wasn't a fit for AP, and that my writing was too meat and potatoes for advanced English. By that point, the rest of the class had come in, and almost all of them laughed at me, since I was the smart kid who usually helped them with their work. I cried in class, and the guy who always asked to cheat off me tried to comfort me. The rest of the year was miserable as we slowly read, and eventually gave up on multiple books. This was also the same teacher who berated me for being boring when I had to write about my summer vacation, something I had to make up because I was abused as a kid and literally locked in my room. Between that and some traumatic events later that year, I mostly gave up writing. My father sabotaged my plans to attend an arts-oriented college by faking a rejection letter. I ended up going into a career I pretty much hate now instead. But when I think about why I didn't pursue writing, I always come back to that moment. If you're reading this, screw you, Mrs. Loveway. Story 3. I didn't know what the word facilities meant. The teacher asked me to read it off the board, and I started saying fa-si-ties. She looked at me with horror and mocked me. Who has ever heard of facilities? She spent the rest of the lesson mocking me, and all the kids joined in. Having an adult laugh in my face was strange and terrifying. When I got home, I was really upset. The next day, I didn't want to go to school, but my parents made me. All day, the teacher kept bringing up the joke, again and again pointing to the word facetious on the board, definitely not faceties. Everyone. Big laughs followed. I decided I didn't want to go to school anymore. When I told my parents, my mother, who can be pretty intense, got very angry. The next day, the teacher didn't apologize but spent the entire day warning that there would be no joking in class anymore in case somebody who can't take a joke got offended. That led to about a year of bullying. Guys, I was 9. She's dead now. I hope a terrible place has all the facilities you desire. Story 4. I was 16 when my parents decided it was time for me to get my first real job. They took me to a fancy restaurant down the hill to see if they were hiring. They said they needed a dishwasher and that I could start on Thanksgiving Day. That really bummed me out. I have a large Irish Catholic family, and Thanksgiving is a big deal. Plus, I love the food. But I took the job. I showed up and worked an 8-plus-hour shift, busting my buns washing dishes. I kept up with the heavy load too, since they were hosting a giant Thanksgiving banquet. At the end of the night, the manager let us make a plate from the leftovers. Then she brought me into her office, handed me an envelope with $50 in it, and said she'd call me if they ever needed me again. I was furious. I still am. I gave up my favorite family holiday to work myself to the bone for $50, and if don't call us, we shall call you. Story 5. In my third year of university, I took a course on women's history. We had to do a big group project in pairs of 2. We picked a topic, then found a partner whose topic fit well with ours to create a joint presentation. There were specific requirements for how 2 topics should work together. We got to choose our partners, but if our chosen topic didn't match well with anyone else, we could work alone. I wanted to focus on women's property rights in Britain from the 17th to 19th centuries and the changes that took place. There was this guy who was really weird and way too into Japanese culture. He was white, but wore kimono-style robes to class, tried to get us to call him by a Japanese name, and hung out at the International Center, bothering Asian students until they banned him from going there. Just creepy cultural appropriation stuff. He chose to look at Japanese women in history as his topic. Nothing specific, just Japanese women. The professor decided he and I needed to work together. I argued that our topics didn't meet the criteria for pairing, but she wouldn't listen. The whole project was a disaster. He refused to narrow down his topic, refused to collaborate, and wouldn't work on the presentation. He ignored emails and told me he was too busy to talk whenever I approached him in class. He simply wouldn't discuss the project. All I knew was his topic was Japanese women through history, covering everything from the dawn of time to 1700, well before my chosen time period, and with no way to connect the two. I spoke to the professor a few times and was told I needed to be a better partner, alter my topic to match his, and put more effort into working with him. I was even told to talk about property rights in the same time period as him. On presentation day, he went first and gave a long spiel about Japanese women, everything but property or legal rights. His entire part was about makeup, clothing, and how cool they were. Because I had no idea what he was doing, all I could do was generalize that for most of history, women had no property rights and were not considered people under the law, essentially making them property themselves. About 3 minutes into my half of the presentation, the professor stood up and told me to stop. She then told the class I was wrong, that I didn't know anything, and that my presentation was horrible. She told them not to listen to me and to erase any notes they had taken from my part. She berated me for not working with my partner to find middle ground and make sure my topic complemented his, publicly failed me in front of the entire class, and told me to go sit down. I was in tears. I had tried so hard and spoken to her many times about his refusal to discuss the project. I left the class and never went back. I also went to the history department head and filed a complaint. I wasn't allowed to present the alternate assignment I had created, but he did make her give me a passing grade. I took the final exam and barely squeaked by. She was never disciplined. Nothing happened. I will never forget the feeling of being humiliated and put down by my professor after bringing my concerns to her and having them dismissed. Story 6. I had a friend in college borrow my truck when I flew home for a month, about 1,500 miles away. He agreed to the terms, no crossing state lines, only driving it to work and back, and if I found out otherwise, it would be a big deal. I wasn't home a week when I got a call from our friend group. He had taken the truck to Connecticut, drove drunk, road raged at someone on the highway, and lightly tapped the back of a car. The kicker? He backed into his buddy's dad's brand new Lexus, causing $3,000 worth of damage. Needless to say, I flew home the next day. When I confronted him, he basically said, "I don't have the money, it's your problem." So I had my mom, the insurance company, and the Lexus owner all breathing down my neck to fix the issue. The Lexus owner called to say he'd file a police report if I didn't pay. My mom was screaming about the insurance company dropping me. I went to school for the day, came back, and my friend had vanished, cleaned out a bunch of stuff from the apartment, and stole everyone's things. What still makes my blood boil is that one of my good friends who lived with us vehemently defends the jerk whenever it's brought up. I get that he didn't screw that friend over, but denying it and telling me to just let bygones be bygones is something I cannot do. To clarify some stuff up, the reason I said my mom was mad is because she had warned me over and over not to let anyone drive my truck. For a day or two, we didn't talk, but once everything blew over, she wasn't angry anymore. I was only 19 at the time, and she chalked it up to a life lesson learned. Before I flew home, I called the insurance agency and told them exactly what had happened. I also called the worthless jerk who took my truck and told him that if it wasn't back in front of my apartment soon, I'd report it stolen. Honestly, I wish I had. That phone call lasted about 15 minutes, and most of it was me screaming at him. I've never had anger issues before, but after the first few minutes, I don't remember much. It felt like a rage blackout. When I landed and got to my apartment, my truck was there, and we had the conversation where he said, "Yeah, I can pay it. I am broke." One of my friends, who had picked me up from the airport, had to hold me back. The next day, when I got home from school, the jerk had jumped the state line, taking all his belongings from the apartment and some of my stuff too. A few days later, the insurance agency called and asked for the full story again. I gave them all the details, including his name and address. That was the last I heard from them. No bills, and my rates never went up. The guy whose dad owned the Lexus contacted me, saying his dad was going to file a police report if I didn't pay or provide insurance information. I told him the insurance company already had everything. I also said if anyone was going after someone, it should be the jerk who caused the damage. I gave him the guy's information and never heard another word about it. After all that, the jerk jumped state lines again. I am not sure where he went, but he did try to reach out to me. I promptly told him to F off and never contact me again. The friend who had tried to back him up when I was upset finally cut the jerk out of his life after some of our other friends came forward with stories about what the jerk had done with my truck, drinking and hit-and-run incidents. He finally sided with me. We didn't talk for a while after that, but eventually we made up. Story 7. May I contribute a science fair project to my salty memory myself? When I was in second grade, our class was allowed to walk through the library to see all the science fair projects. I was absolutely in love with the science fair and had been looking forward to it all year. We were warned not to touch anything, so I carefully kept my hands clasped behind my back. The library had a sunken reading nook with steps around it, and the projects were lined up on those steps. As I walked, fascinated by the projects, I accidentally fell down the steps and nudged a project on the way down. My teacher said that counted as touching the projects, so I had to sit in the corner for the rest of the time, unable to see any of the projects. I just sat there, sobbing. I had been so excited for weeks, and then I wasn't allowed to see anything because I fell. Story 8. My former manager was told about my wedding date a full year in advance. He said, "Cool, sounds good." I added it to the team calendar and went on with my life. About 2 weeks before the wedding, I reminded him about my week off for the wedding and honeymoon. He responded, "Man, this is really short notice, and it's going to be difficult to pass your work around the team. Can you move it?" I said, "No. I told you a year ago, and it's been on the calendar the whole time." He said, "I am not sure I can give you the time off." I replied, "Honestly, you can give me the week off, leaving you short-staffed for a week, or I can quit and leave you short-staffed permanently. Your choice. Finding a new job in this industry won't be hard for me." He shut up real fast, and I got the week off, because he knew I wasn't bluffing. He was a problematic manager that I started having a lot of issues with. He'd act like your best friend, but in meetings with other leadership, he'd completely tear you down. The other managers would always fill me in afterward. I just played along like I had no idea right up until the very end. Another time, he tried to deny my request for 2 days off because someone else might want that time off. I called him out that it was first come slash first serve, and if he didn't approve it, I'd just take it anyway and bring this up to his boss, the director. He shut up and gave me the time off again. I got promoted to an entirely different team I've wanted to be on because the same director came back after trying a different job elsewhere for a few years. The director's first remark when he saw me still in the same position was, "I am a bit disappointed because I expected you to move up quickly." I told him I've tried, but a certain manager has been telling the hiring managers that I am unproductive. The director got me the promotion and moved me to a new team, and my former manager completely flipped out. He had a meeting with the director claiming I was unproductive and showed manipulated metrics to back it up. The director knew it was nonsense and ran a report himself. He pulled me into the meeting and said, "So, the manager says you've been unproductive and shows me metrics saying you're at 10% productivity for the year. However, when the director presented the real data, showing about 300% productivity day over day, the manager went pale. It turned out he had been filtering out every task he assigned to me because my other 8 teammates weren't doing much, and I was picking up all the slack. The director asked, 'Do you have any questions about this? I want you to be honest.' I said, 'Yeah. If I am so unproductive, why is it that whenever something goes sideways or someone doesn't complete their tasks, you ask me to pick up all the slack? If I weren't productive or reliable, wouldn't that be a risk?' The manager had no answer. The truth was, he was a poor manager with no backbone to hold his employees accountable. Whenever a client or account manager panicked, his first instinct was always to dump the work on me. What took my teammates days or even weeks to figure out, I have no idea what they were doing. I'd clean up and complete within hours. Losing me meant his own shortcomings would be exposed because everyone who wasn't doing their jobs reported to him. I mentioned this vaguely in another post on TFTS about how, after I moved to my new team doing what I am actually good at, he still tried to dump his team's work on me. I'd reassign those tasks back to his team, and he'd message me asking if I could help him out by taking them again. My answer was simple. No, this is not my team's problem, and since you've said I am unproductive, taking that work would only hurt the client further, right? I got no response to that. My current manager put a stop to it completely. He told the former manager that I am not his dumping ground because his team is beyond incompetent, and he better not see any of his team's work assigned to me again because I no longer report to him, and B, it's not my current team's responsibility. Story 9. In 4th grade, on the first library visit of the new school year, I brought the book I wanted to borrow up to the librarian. She told me I couldn't take it until I returned the previous book. Since it was the first time we'd been there that year, I told her I hadn't checked out any books yet. She pointed clearly to the computer and said, "The computer says you have this book out. You have to pay the late fine and return it before taking this one." I tried to argue that I had never even heard of the book, but she insisted and wouldn't let me take it. Then the person behind me stepped up. The librarian said she had a late fine too. The kid explained, "I already paid that." The librarian replied, "Oh, no problem. This computer is old and makes mistakes all the time." The kid got the book, and I stood there dumbfounded. It made my blood boil in 4th grade, and it still does 20 years later. Story 10. When I was in grade 7, a kid in grade 8 was being an annoying little jerk on the bus, teasing me as we were getting ready to ride home after school. I shot an elastic band at him and it hit him somewhere below the waist. He ran off the bus holding his eye and found the vice principal, who promptly suspended me from the bus for the ride home and the entire next day. I had to wait at school while they called my mom, who had to scramble to arrange for my aunt to pick me up on short notice. Then the next morning, my mom had to be over an hour late for work just to drop me off at school. I still remember her giving the VP an earful over the ridiculous bus suspension. We went to a county school, so most students, including us, relied on the bus service, and most parents worked in the city 30 minutes away. It was one of the most disruptive punishments you could give a working parent. So, screw that kid, and screw that VP. Story 11. Long story short, I got placed in a math class I didn't need and missed out on a choir. I really enjoyed being part of, though. I am tone deaf, so they were probably better off. The teacher regularly taught the material incorrectly, then spent 5 minutes showing us the right way before giving us a quiz the very next day that counted toward our grades. He gave me little to no credit on problems where I got the correct answer, used the right formulas, and showed all my work just because I didn't do it his specific way. This was despite the fact that I had a specialized tutor just for this class, who told me the teacher's method was the hardest possible way to solve those problems. 58 out of 60 students failed the class that year. He had 2 classes teaching the same subject, and he constantly claimed the other class was doing just fine. Funny enough, I had a friend in that other class, and apparently he was telling them we were the ones doing fine. I almost didn't get into the college of my dreams because of that one class. It ingrained in me the belief that no matter how hard I try, I will never succeed, something that has affected me daily ever since. And on top of it all, he accused me of cheating on the final. I will say it again. He accused me of cheating on the final exam of a class I didn't even need to graduate in my senior year of high school, a class I hadn't so much as passed a single homework sheet in. 8 years later, and I am still salty about it. Screw you, Franco, and especially screw you, Croak. You should known better. You should been in my corner. You should listen to me. You wanted to help, but instead of asking how best to do it, you decided you knew better, and you've messed me up for years because of it. I hope you're happy because I was miserable that entire year, most of college, and I am still dealing with the fallout of your nonsense to this day. Story 12. In a 5th grade science test, the question was, are there any stars in the solar system? I answered, yes. The teacher marked it wrong. I went up afterwards and said, what about the sun? He said, he meant that all the other stars are not in our solar system and kept it marked wrong. Although I am harboring this for 50 years now, he was all around one of the best teachers I ever had and just passed away a week or so ago. But damn, that should have been marked right. Story 13. When I was in high school, I was occasionally allowed to drive my family's 3rd car. It had a slow leak in one of the tires, so we were all supposed to check the pressure and put air in it if we needed to. I picked up a friend to go to a movie, and when we came out, one tire was completely flat. It wasn't the one with the leak, so I put the spare on and drove home. I got absolute crap from my parents about it. How irresponsible I was to not check it. I'd have to pay for the repair. Why didn't I call roadside assistance, etc.? Took it to get fixed. Repeated the whole lecture as we're dropping it off, and the tech who did it called my mom and told her he'd found a nail in the tire and there was no way I could have seen it coming. She refused to apologize and I still had to pay for it. Story 14. In kindergarten, I was playing with a kid in the sandbox on a drizzly day. We were building a castle and there was a puddle a few feet away. He wanted to dig a moat around the castle and I said sure. So he jams his hand in the dirt and starts digging, making a way too large channel, something he immediately realized would destroy our castle. I said, quick, build a dam to stop the water. He froze, stared at me wide-eyed and mouth agape, then ran off. I thought that was strange, but whatever. I went back to digging to save the castle. Then the teacher ran up, grabbed me, and told me to go to timeout. I protested, saying I didn't do anything wrong. She accused me of saying a rude word and told me not to lie. I was confused and denied it. After a few back and forths where she tried to pull me by the arm and I resisted, she finally asked what happened. I explained the story. Her face dropped when she realized the other kid had thought I said damn instead of damn and immediately tattled on me. She suggested maybe I use a different word, but I strongly protested. No, that's the correct word for this situation, and it's his fault for not knowing it, and so on. Eventually, she relented and explained to the other kid that I hadn't sworn and that no one likes tattletales. I am in my 30s now, on the other side of the country, and I still remember that moment as the first time I truly wept for my fellow man, for he is foolish. Story 15. So, my dad and mom got divorced before I was one, and he would randomly come around once every few years to pretend to be a dad for a week or two, then disappear again. This is important to the story. Anyway, I have always struggled at and hated math. We got a homework assignment. I think I was in first grade. We were working on 0 times whatever number. I was super excited because I understood it and knew I would get all the questions right. The whole worksheet was just questions asking what 0 times another number was. My father made me show him the worksheet when I was finished and made me change every freaking answer because, wow, you're dumb. Did you pay attention at all in class? I explained to the teacher when I turned it in and still got a frigging 0. Seriously though, to those of you kind-hearted human beings and parents out there who have broken the cycle, you're amazing. You keep doing what you're doing. You're an awesome human being, and I love you. To those of you out there who have had similar experiences to this, and to those of you who, like me, have experienced way worse, I feel you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I know life really freaking sucks sometimes. Okay, a lot of the time for some of us, and I know that there's times where you just want to beat your head against the wall because it seems like Groundhog Day. Every day is the same and just horrible, but it does, and will get better. Just remember that the night is always the darkest just before dawn. Story 16. When I was about 7, my mother met my sister's father and married him. Growing up, I was very poor. I helped my mom and dad when he was around with jobs like landscaping to earn money for school supplies, toys, and the things I wanted. My sister's dad had a lot of money, so for the year or so they were married, we didn't struggle financially for once. He was really into Pokemon as a kid. I had tons of cards, books, figures, games, you name it. I even had the Japanese exclusive yellow version for Game Boy Color. I owned every ultra-rare card you could think of. Much of it was stuff I bought myself or rare gifts from family. Then my sister's dad became extremely religious and decided that Pikachu is the devil. One day, while I was at school, he threw away every single piece of my Pokemon stuff. Everything, even my Pokemon washcloth. Here is the kicker. After my mom and he divorced, he kept custody of my sister on weekends. A few times I visited to watch her, and her entire room was decked out in Pokemon, everything, all brand new and fancy thanks to his money. The cherry on top? My sister barely knew what Pokemon was. She's 7 years younger than me. I still wonder if he did it out of spite. It's childish, I know, but it still annoys me to this day. Story 17. When I got my first car, a really old one, my dad told me I'd be responsible for gas money and he would take care of the maintenance. After a while, my brakes started making strange noises, so I told my dad. I reminded him about it every week or so for maybe 6 months, and he always said, "Yeah, I got it. I will handle it." My boyfriend at the time wouldn't let me drive the car any further because he was worried about my safety, so he took it to a mechanic. The mechanic told me that if I had come sooner, the repair would cost around 50 euros. But over time, the brakes got worse, and by then, the repair would be over 800 euros. When I told my dad, he just said there was no way he'd spend that much money on a car worth maybe 500 euros. I ended up selling the car for scrap. That was 10 years ago, and I still bring it up with my dad sometimes. If he had just done something when I first told him, it would have been so much cheaper and easier. Story 18. I've mentioned this before, but when I was about 8 or 9, we had a big project in school which ended with us writing a story. I spent frigging hours on this thing. It was going to be the best book ever. It was only a matter of time before it was snapped up by some publishers, and then it would be the talk of the Scholastic Book Fair. No doubt in my mind. It absolutely had to be in by the time school finished for Christmas, so my teacher could mark it over the break, so I stayed up until about 10 o'clock at night for about a week beforehand working on its set, which you know is the closest thing you get to an all-nighter when you're about 9. It was my magnum opus. I got back to school in January to find that she had lost it, because she was accusing me of not handing it in, and C, because mine was the only one she couldn't find. She decided to call me out in front of the class about it. I ended up locking myself in the toilet because I was crying so much. Worse still, it later transpired that when it turned up after all, she marked it as though it was handed in late, and the woman still only gave me a middling grade. F you. Mrs. Harding. Story 19. When I was 17 in high school, I was dreaming of becoming a published author one day. I had always enjoyed storytelling, and I would always make a special effort to do well in school when it came to creative writing. At some point during the year, our professor asked us to write him a short story of about 1,000 words. I was very excited because I had tremendous respect for that man and loved his classes. I really wanted to impress him. I wrote a sci-fi short story that involved an ice planetoid turned into a digging site for underground resources. Workers lived in stacked boxes apartments and traveled in spheres shooting through a network of large above-ground tubes. The plot involved the protagonist uncovering an artificial structure under the ice, then being immediately fired and sent back to Earth in a single-person shuttle. It was strongly implied that the single-person shuttle was just a way to dispose of workers who knew too much about what the corporation was really digging for. Anyway, it wasn't very good, probably a little derivative. I did consume a lot of sci-fi books, movies, games, etc., and nothing more than you'd expect from an average 17-year-old. But the professor handed it back to me without having even marked it, asking me to turn in another one on very short notice, this time without plagiarizing from some popular novel. I told him I didn't, asked what book he thought I plagiarized, because if a book told that story, I honestly wanted to read it, swearing the story was purely my own. I even admitted that I was likely influenced by a lot of things but still came up with that one organically. He never heard my plea, never even named the book, or gave me more of a reason why he thought so poorly of my work. Lost a lot of respect for him and a lot of interest in his classes after that. I am still pissed about it, and it's been over 20 years. Story 20. In elementary school, there was a pencil machine in the front lobby where you could get pencils for 25 cents. There were also special pencils that had stars on them. If you got one of these special pencils, you could take it into the office and get a prize. One day, I decided to get a pencil. I put in my quarter, and out popped 2 pencils, and one of them was a special pencil. I went into the office and told the lady at the desk that the machine gave me 2 pencils, and one of them was special. She proceeded to say that the machine shouldn't do that, took the special pencil, and didn't give me a prize. That was 19 years ago, and I am still mad. Edit to answer some of the more common questions. The prizes were stuff like the fancy erasers that didn't actually erase anything, fun-size candy bars, stuff like that. Think 5 to 10 tickets at Chuck E. Cheese's. I probably didn't go to school with you. This happened in Michigan. Apparently, the pencil machines are a common thing. This happened in either 2nd or 3rd grade, so the time was probably closer to 20 to 21 years ago. Heck, that makes me feel old. The main lesson I learned was to withhold irrelevant information and lie if I know the truth might negatively affect me. Good work, random office receptionist. Story 21. I was mercilessly bullied in middle school. My parents couldn't do anything because the bullies' parents were on the parent council, basically the PTA, and their kids would never be at fault. My dad encouraged me to fight back because the scales were never in the victim's favor. In ninth grade gym class, we played dodgeball every day, and every day a bully would whip balls point blank at my face. I even got punished for not participating properly. Thankfully, a student teacher noticed how badly the gym teacher treated some of us and finally put him in his place. They even tried to strip me of my honor roll status by grading me just low enough to drop my average. What I am saying is, bullies come from both students and teachers. Every day, I am thankful I am no longer in school. Story 22. One year, my mom decided she didn't want Christmas presents and made sure to tell me and my two brothers. I suggested we donate the money we would have spent to charity in her name instead. She was fine with that if it was what we wanted to do. So that's what I did. I sent her a nice card along with information about the charities I donated to so she could see how her decision helped some good organizations. Mom was pissed. She said, "Why didn't you just send me a gift card if you weren't going to buy me anything? You ruined Christmas." I love my mom. We'd only had one really nasty fight years before, and she was fine growing up, and for most of my adulthood, except for a self-offing attempt that I had to call an ambulance for from across the country. Long story. I am used to buying her thoughtful presents, so when she accused me of ruining Christmas, I was distraught. I sent her a screenshot of our conversation where she said she was fine with my decision to donate in her name. Her response? "I don't remember that. I deleted those texts." I lost my cool and told her it was her own fault for raising me to do as I am told, and next time she should just not say anything if she's going to change her mind and not tell us. After that, we didn't speak for 3 months. This happened 2.5 years ago, and I still haven't gotten over it. Story 23. I am 35 now. When I was around 14 or 15, my mom suddenly stormed into my room one evening and accused me of smashing a glass and hiding the evidence. It was one of those retro Coke glasses. I swore I hadn't broken anything, and even if I had, why would I try to cover up such a small accident? But she didn't believe me. She was furious and insisted I was lying, without ever saying why I was the prime suspect. Somehow, it just had to be me. I got in trouble for it, despite there being no proof. Sometime later, it turned out no glass had been broken at all. My mom had assumed the set she bought came with 4 glasses, but it turned out our neighbor had the same set, and there were actually only 3. My mom acknowledged that fact but never apologized for screaming at me or accusing me without reason. She just never brought it up again. I am still mad about it. Story 24. When I was around 10, there was a school competition being filmed by a TV crew. The deal was simple. Whoever won the race won the prize. I didn't care about the cameras. I just wanted to run and win. I was a pretty good athlete. When the crew came to our class and called for the girls to participate, I stood up, excited for another chance to race. But they said, "No, not you. We only want really fair girls." I was too young to fully understand why I wasn't chosen. I wasn't crying, just confused and pissed off. Thankfully, the boys in my class were great. They kept cracking jokes until I started laughing. You know what? Screw them. I would have won if I had raced, and the PE teacher knew it. That's probably why her own daughter ended up competing and her complexion was just like mine. So F the crew and F that teacher. Story 25. Back in grade school, I had 2 really close friends named Juan and Nick. The 3 of us were tight, bonding over our shared nerdy interests like reading, Star Wars, and The Simpsons. We also loved drawing. I don't remember exactly how it started, but we ended up creating this notebook we passed back and forth. It was a comic about a guy named Tom and his cat. We'd each take turns drawing a strip, just a few panels, and then hand it off to the next person. The comic was about the mundane, everyday life of Tom. Stuff like Tom deciding which shirt to wear or accidentally dropping the cat food on the floor. It was dumb, but the three of us thought it was absolutely hilarious. We were weird kids and we leaned into it. One day, our teacher caught us with the notebook and confiscated it. She never said anything about it, but I can only imagine what she must thought flipping through those absurd comics. We were laughing hysterically when she took it, which probably didn't help. We never got it back. Apparently she lost it. And 23 years later, I am still mad about that. I would love to look back at the ridiculous comics we made. It might have been nonsense, but it was our nonsense. Story 26. It all ended last year. This boy and girl used to bully me so intensely that I would cry myself to sleep or consider skipping school. It got so bad that the girl even threatened to wait outside school to beat me up. Yet everyone, including the teachers, adored them. They told me I was being childish and dismissed my concerns by saying, "The girl has a bad past, they both do," as if that excused their behavior. The teachers even praised her for having an attitude, mistaking her rudeness for being real and brave. I went through a lot of difficult things too, things that brought my school counselors to tears, but I never bullied anyone just because they were quiet and kept to themselves. Story 27. Back in high school, my friend invited me over to play Dead or Alive 2 on the Dreamcast, but he never bothered to teach me how to play or explain that countering was central to the gameplay. He proceeded to destroy me for about 10 games, until I started getting better and even turned the tables without using counters. Once he began losing, he just stopped playing. The next day, he told everyone at school how horrible I was at the game. That motivated me to practice. I bought the game myself, and when I finally learned how important countering was, I felt betrayed. I got crazy good at the game, all with the goal of playing him again, but he never took me up on it. So my path of vengeance remains untraveled. Story 28. When I was 11, I played cricket at a decent level. I bowled for my school and county. During PE class, we were playing cricket with all the kids, including those who weren't very good. Cricket has a rule called LBW, leg before wicket, which means if the ball would have hit the stumps but was blocked by the batter's legs, the batter is still out. It's somewhat like striking out in baseball. All the kids in my class stood directly in front of the stumps, and because I bowled fast and accurately, they couldn't hit the ball, and I kept hitting their legs every delivery. But the teacher refused to enforce the LBW rule, so I couldn't take any wickets or win the game. I was usually a teacher's pet, but that day I shouted at her. Story 29. I went to a Build-A-Bear interview. If you don't know, they do them in huge groups and ask absolutely asinine questions. The interviewer asked what sea creature I'd like to be, and my 15-year-old dumb backside said goldfish. That woman laughed like a hyena and got everyone else to laugh with her. Screw you, lady. I hope you're still stuck at Build-A-Bear asking your stupid questions. Story 30. In college, I took a neuroscience class. The professor was in her last year before retirement and assigned pointless tasks that had nothing to do with neuroscience. For one assignment, we had to read a neuroscience book, either a textbook or nonfiction for entertainment, and write a paper about the author's worldview. Since it was a Christian college, that wasn't too unusual, but it definitely wasn't relevant to the class. I did the assignment and got a 90. Why did she dock 10 points? Because my margins weren't 1 inch, except they were. I brought a ruler, showed her, and even showed my computer settings. She still refused to give the points back, claiming the margins were too wide. For future assignments, I set my margins to 0.75 inches and got perfect scores. I guess that looked like 1 inch to her. Story 31. I had a group project for a film class in college. It was a huge lecture, so my group had about 10 people, myself, the only female, and all guys. We were assigned 2 films and were supposed to split the group into 2 to cover each. The films were The Departed and Lawrence of Arabia. I think you can guess which one everyone wanted to do. I ended up watching a nearly 4-hour film from the 60s while everyone else ignored the instructions. At the presentation, I gave my portion on Lawrence of Arabia, and 9 guys gave overlapping presentations on The Departed. It was mortifying, and we were graded as a group. Screw group projects. Story 32. When I was in 1st grade, belly bands were huge. Everyone wore them up their arms, and whoever had the most and the coolest ones was at the top of the social ladder. The thing is, I was a weird kid, definitely an outcast in 1st grade. Fortunately, my family could afford to get me a belly band, and I had a lot. One day, during circle time, I was at my desk when my teacher told me to take them off. Then she changed her mind and said I could keep them on. She kept flipping and flopping. Eventually she snapped and said, "You're taking too long, give them to me." She took my belly band. I guess that was okay. I could have taken them off or left them on, and I was interrupting class a bit. Here's the thing though, she didn't give them back. That really hurt. As a child with undiagnosed ADHD and autism, I felt some serious emotions that were hard to control. If that wasn't enough, a few weeks later, we had a classroom sale using our classroom money. Kids would donate their toys, and we could save up fake cash for good behavior. She had put my belly band in the class shop. I didn't have any cash, and other kids bought mine. I later transferred schools because I couldn't fit into the white upper-middle-class preppy vibe. Story 33. I was viciously bullied by a pair of sisters in high school. Both were artsy and sensitive theater types, and they were furious that as a freshman I had all my submitted art published in our literary magazine and landed a speaking role in the school musical, where one of them was the female lead that year. During one performance, they cornered me in the dressing room and tore apart everything they decided I was terrible at, my writing, singing, and art, and told me to quit and let true artists like them shine. Our theater teacher defended them, saying they had a rough home life and that my 15-year-old self needed to grow up. Never mind that my parents were going through a brutal divorce, and I was basically the 3rd parent to my younger siblings. They were the main reason I stopped doing theater, and I still struggle with making art today, even though I completed an AP studio portfolio and composed music for lab work as an undergrad. I also get paid to write now, but creativity still doesn't come easy. Both girls went on to become teen moms, and neither finished college. One was so neglectful that her daughter was adopted by her parents, and she was slapped with a restraining order. I am salty about their bullying. Even saltier about the teacher, who was eventually fired years later for underperformance. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.